I got some catching up to do. Back just in time for draft week coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm back from my honeymoon. I'm back from my wedding. I am back just in time for draft week. It is draft week for the Sabres. Free agency is inching closer. I hope everybody had a good couple of weeks and enjoyed the shows we put out for you on some of the free agent options for the Sabres. We'll have more of that coming your way before free agency, but we'll turn our attention more towards the draft here on Locked On Sabres over the next couple of days, with the draft coming on Wednesday. But also some stuff to catch up on that I'll want to get into as well, whether that's Zemgus Girgensons re-signing, even Lucas Rusek, the forward group really, kind of being figured out before the offseason really begins. A trade rumor to talk about, two trade rumors, one of an internal option and one of an external option for the Sabres. So all that is ahead at Sneaky Joe Sports. If you want to follow me on Twitter at Locked On Sabres to follow the podcast account, and if you want to tweet us or send us a comment on YouTube to get involved with the show, we always greatly appreciate that. So really just kind of a recap of things I missed. I have some takes on things that I missed over the last couple of weeks. By the way, Greece, unbelievable. Italy, even more incredible. Venice blows me away. If you ever hit me up, if you ever want some, I have some European travel experience now. I've done it. And Greece was really cool. I would definitely have some strong recommendations about how to do it. Venice is just unbelievable. I can't believe that place exists. Just whether it's even like how the buildings are standing. If there's a foundational problem, the foundations are underwater. How do you fix it? Just it is an unbelievable city. So definitely enjoyed that. But man, as I was away, I was thinking about the Sabres a lot more than I was the Bills. I really came to this conclusion that I am far more excited for the Sabres season to start than I am for the Bills season. And that a lot is expectations and, where the two teams are in their builds. The Bills are Super Bowl or bust, so the regular season doesn't mean as much. The Sabres are maybe going to be good for the first time in a decade. And I have every reason to believe that they are going to be good. So because of that, it's new. It's all about the regular season and making the playoffs. That excitement, that buzz being back in the building, man, I let the hockey season begin already. I'm super pumped to see what they're going to do in the next couple of weeks. And I have strong feelings about what they're going to do. I think they are going to do things. Get into Kevin Adams' comments a little bit later on as well. But starting with things that I missed, Zemgus Girgensons signs back with the Buffalo Sabres. The forward group, to me, with Zemgus back on a one-year deal at, what did they end up at? $2.5 million. I had it in front of me. I think it was $2.5 million for Girgensons. Yeah. I think that kind of locks in the majority of the forward group. There's a spot or two left, but any big external signing, not even big, like I didn't think they were going to sign, a giant free agent whale. I know we talked about O'Reilly a little bit and some other guys, but I don't know how seriously I considered that they would do that. I thought there could be an appetite for replace Girgensons with a more defensive specialist, face-off guy, penalty killing. Zemgus is a good defensive player at 5-on-5, but he's a winger. So he doesn't give you that face-off specialty that they might have wanted. And he's not as good a penalty killer as you might think. I thought they might try to upgrade from him on that front. But they're good with him because he's still defensively solid. And the leadership ability that he brings, the speed that he has on the fourth line. He does bring some goal scoring, double-digit goals in a couple of straight seasons here. I'm not stunned that they did it. I guess I'm a little surprised they did that and Kyle Okposo, because the Sabres' fourth line is pretty much locked in. Like, I would fully expect they're going to open the season with Peyton Krebs centering Kyle Okposo and Zemgus Girgensons. And I kind of feel for Peyton Krebs on that front that he's going to be relegated to this defensive fourth line role for the foreseeable future when he's very skilled and I think capable of playing with more skilled players. But I think that's their line. I think that line is together. And I don't know how much more room there is for any forward. I think they're pretty much locked in. And what does that say about the Sabres' judgment of their forwards? I think everyone knows, hey, man, they could score, and it worked. They were third in the league in scoring. This forward group was not good defensively. I don't think anyone's out there arguing that they were. They just weren't. And to me, the Sabres bringing back the exact same unit says, two things. One, they're okay being this super high-powered scoring team that is really bad defensively among their forward group. They don't have good defensive forwards, but they're okay with that. And I guess I'm fine that they're okay with that. But it means that, and I think at the same time, it also means they must expect that there is internal growth for this group defensively. And the guys I'd want to point to specifically for that are Krebs. Krebs already showing his ability as a very good defensive center last year. I think they think there's another big leap there for Dylan Cousins to make as a defensive player. His reputation is far above what his actual ability is in his own end at the moment. And another guy I'd want to point to is Jack Quinn for this. I think Jack Quinn has a lot of capability as an overall two-way forward. I don't know about Peterka. I don't know about Middlestat. I don't know how much more growth there is around the lineup, but those are the three guys that I might want to think Kevin Adams and Don Granato are expecting to help the Sabres with their defensive ability up front. It's Krebs, it's Cousins, and I think Quinn is the other guy for that. I think Quinn came on strong in that department at the end of the year. He started penalty killing a little bit more. I think Quinn might be a piece of that as well. But they're okay with it. Now, the Sabres also re-signed Lucas Rusek, and that's a two-way contract. I guess he becomes a call-up guy, 2-year deal, $775,000. Maybe the first call-up, I had speculated he could be in the Sabres opening night lineup. I don't think that's going to happen now. But Rusek back in the picture as some depth for Rochester and also to be a call-up. Now, while we're on the forward group, Kevin Adams did say they want to re-sign Tyson Jost. That comes as a surprise to me. We'll see if he actually does that. I might want to believe it when I see it, that they'll actually bring back Tyson Jost. But I was running through some lines the other day. I do think there's room for Jost, but maybe he's going to just be, in line for that 13th forward position. Like, hey, we like you, and you're a good overall player. You're maybe not the penalty kill specialist we would have hoped for, but you're good. 5-on-5, we like you a lot. And they might sign him thinking, well, they were lucky with injuries last year, and how likely is that to happen again for forwards? Someone will always be injured, and if someone's always injured, Jost is going to play a majority of the season, despite the fact if you were to put a lineup together with everybody healthy, he wouldn't be on a spot. And then the other piece that I missed while this forward group is kind of shaking out, I think the Sabres kind of figure out their forward group is starting to, the rumors of Victor Olofsson expecting to be traded before training camp or before the season. Not a surprise in the slightest. Fully expecting Olofsson to be moved. We've talked about it like it's a thing that's going to happen since the end of the season. The Sabres showed their hand. They didn't want him in the lineup at the end of the year playing their biggest, most important games. It's nothing against Olofsson. He's a 28-goal scorer. He's a very good scoring winger that I think will have an impact on another team in this league. But the Sabres have the benefit of already having a ton of scoring, and they don't need it. So he can get moved. I wonder what the value will be for him. Can he be used for a trade for a top 4 defenseman or for a goaltender? That's where I wonder about what the level of value Olofsson has. 27 years old, $4.75 million, one more year on his contract, but also coming off his best season as a goal scorer. So Olofsson, fully expecting that he'll be moved. And that's pretty much it for the forward group. One other thing I missed that I want to tackle when we come back, a trade rumor about Hurricanes defenseman Brett Pesce. I'll tell you what I like about this idea and where we're at. There was an update about this over the weekend. since the original report on Pesce. So that's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. And we are presented by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage on the site and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Welcome back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. After today's show, be sure to check out Locked On's 2023 NHL Mock Draft Special. The local hosts of the Locked On NHL channel have made their picks, including myself, and hosts Gil Martin and Hadi Kalakash break down every selection over the 3-day mock draft event. Find the episodes on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Another thing I missed while I was away for 2 weeks on my honeymoon was a rumor involving the Sabres about the Hurricanes defenseman Brett Pesce. And the rumor essentially was that the Hurricanes would be willing to move on from Brett Pesce. And he said, Pierre LeBrun, among the teams I am told that have already reached out on Brett Pesce, the Buffalo Sabres, who have made a priority of going out and getting a top 4 defenseman, they have interest in Pesce. And there was a follow-up this weekend. Now, not necessarily a good follow-up, but not a bad one either. This weekend, LeBrun, it's looking more likely Pesce gets extended. There were talks with Carolina. There are plenty of teams still calling, including Buffalo. Buffalo is the only team that Pierre mentions as still calling on Pesce. So they're staying plugged in. To me, maybe even if the leader in the clubhouse is that he gets signed, if he does get dealt, then I think the Sabres might be the team that ends up pulling it off. But it's a good sign that, hey, there's this good second pair defenseman. It's on the market. And right there's the Sabres. They're the first team mentioned. They're the only team mentioned. They are the team that's going after a guy like that. Now, what I like about the Brett Pesce idea is I think a lot of things. The age fits. 28 years old, not too old in this regard. He does need a contract, only one more year on his deal. So that's a part of this equation, but the Sabres can afford to give him a new contract. He's kind of had a down year defensively, but he's still a very good second pair defenseman. And there have been years in the past where I think you could make a strong argument that Pesce has been a top pair defenseman in the NHL. He doesn't put up giant numbers. 30 points was actually a career high for him last year. So the numbers are not great. The advanced numbers are great great offensive and transition defenseman each year, including last year. Last year was a down year defensively for Pesce, but it was not when it comes to his passing ability and his ability to pick up the forwards and get, rushes going. So to me, down year defensively, I don't know. Maybe that comes back. Maybe it doesn't. He was in the 21st percentile with Andy and Rono last year in his own end, and that's a little bit of a problematic sign. But in large part for his career, that has not been the case. He's been a very strong player in his own end, and I would think there's a good chance of a return to form, especially playing with Owen Power. I think that would be a very strong second pair, and really the overall here is, even though this is not an idea without risk. I mentioned the down year defensively. Maybe that holds up. Even if it does, even if he doesn't return to top pair defenseman form from a couple years ago, he's a vast upgrade over what the Sabres currently have. Far better than Jokiharju, far better than Lyubushkin and Stillman. Even this version of Brett Pesce. And again, this version I still think is really solid. 68th percentile offensively, 66th percentile transition defenseman. Like, this is a good player, even still, with the Carolina Hurricanes. He's received Norris votes in the past. He never finished anywhere close, not even in the top 10. All-star voting as well, 3 straight years. 20 plus minutes every year of his career with Carolina, except his rookie year. Last year, playing over 22 minutes a night. This is a strong, on a great team. This is a 20 plus minute a night defenseman on one of the best teams in hockey. And I think he's a perfect fit. Right shot defenseman too, if you want it. The veteran that can help Owen Power along in his development as he enters year 2 of his career. I just think every part of this idea makes sense. Now, the only thing that's weird to me is why Carolina would want to trade him. I think they should just sign him. But I guess they're maybe realizing that, and they're going to sign him. That's the question, is do they want to pay him? Now, maybe they're smartening up on that. Maybe they're not. If they're not going to smarten up on that, the thing that I wonder more than anything is, what is Carolina looking for? Because the Sabres don't have defensemen to offer. They don't really have goalies to offer. They have some forward pieces, and Carolina's a good team. So how interested are they in picks and prospects? I don't think a whole lot. Maybe. Then they also are an interesting part in their journey where Sebastian Aho is entering the final year of his contract. This really, I guess, answers the question of why they would want to move on from Pesce. They've got guys to pay. Sebastian Aho, final year of his contract. Teuvo Teravainen, final year of his contract. 2 guys that they're going to want to lock up. Martin Necas, final year of his contract. He'll be then RFA, the other 2 UFAs. Jack Drury, final year of his contract. Seth Jarvis, Ryan Suzuki, a lot of guys that are entering the final year of their deal. They just paid Jordan Stahl, so he's locked up for $2.9 million for a few years. They got to pay a goaltender. Both Antti Ranta and Frederik Andersen are unrestricted free agents, so they're going to have to spend something when it comes to goal. So even though they have cap space, I guess I get on some level why Pesce is not a priority over especially Teravainen and Aho. What do they want? Do they want cheap? I guess if they want cheap, then maybe the picks and prospects the Sabres have could entice them. You know, Yuri Kulik or the 13th overall pick. I wouldn't go near Savoy. I maybe would offer up Noah Östlund, first of all, and maybe that can get you in the door. Or maybe they just want Victor Olofsson. You know, goal scoring. Carolina could always use more scoring punch in their middle 6. Olofsson could be of interest. I don't know what they're looking for. I haven't seen any reports about what they're looking for. I might want to think that the Sabres could convince them a prospect is a good idea because they've got all these guys to pay and they're going to want some cheap labor. But Pesce's a good idea. We'll keep you updated on that as it progresses. Hey, maybe he gets traded at the draft. Maybe he signs at the draft. When we come back, I'm going to wrap things up with General Manager Kevyn Adams, his comments on his pre-draft press conference, and it's draft week. So a quick word on the draft. We'll do much more on that, though, tomorrow. We'll more draft coverage the rest of the week. Today, more of a little bit of a recap as I'm just returning here. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Welcome back to the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase, wrapping things up here on a Monday. And one other thing I missed a press conference by Kevyn Adams and Jerry Fortin before the draft, and some interesting things that came away from that press conference that I'm sure if you're a giant Sabre fan, you were, keeping track of and seeing what Adams was saying. And Adams, I think the couple things that I took away the most from his presser. One were his comments about goaltender. And another sign to me that they're just not going to go with 3 goalies. They're not going to do it again. They're going to have 2. And Adams talked again like they're good with Luukkonen and Levi being their 2 goalies. But I guess I continue to think that's just how he's going to sound. That's how it's going to be. He's not going to trash Luukkonen in the media. He's not going to say, oh yeah, we need to upgrade from net. That gives away your leverage with other teams. So a lot of that to me is window dressing of not wanting to lose your leverage with other teams. So I guess I don't want to fully believe Kevyn Adams when he says that he's okay starting the season with just their internal guys, Comrie, Luukkonen, and Levi. I think it'll be Levi and somebody else. After hearing him again, I still continue to believe that the Sabres' 2 goaltenders on night 1 will be Devin Levi and somebody that's not currently in the organization. That's where I think they're going to end up. So I still think they're going to add a goaltender. I'm not sure they will, but I think they will. I am dead sure they're going to add this defenseman. I am positive. Hearing that from, hearing the way Adam sounded about, his blue line and the rumors about Pesce, all we know about, what they've explored, they are going to add a defenseman, undoubtedly. Now, one other thing Adams got into, defenseman in the draft. Their prospect pool is so weak when it comes to blue liners. And it would make a lot of sense to add a defenseman in this draft. Hearing it from Fortin, hearing it from Adams, and hearing it from Paul Hamilton at GR and others, and just knowing, how the draft usually goes, the NHL draft, it's so much more of best player available than the NFL draft is. The NFL draft, GMs say it's best player available. It's really not. These teams are drafting for specialty priority positions. And the NHL, I do believe it, that it's, hey, if all else is equal, your blue line is really weak in your prospect pool, you draft the defenseman. But this draft, more and more I read about it, and we'll tackle this a little bit more tomorrow, where the Sabres pick, there's not a lot of defensemen that make sense. It's a forward-heavy draft in the first half of the first round. And if that's the case, are you going to reach 10 picks to pick a defenseman? That's where I don't think the NHL is the same as football. You would reach a little bit for a tight end if you needed one, or a lineman. Hockey, I think you just pick the best player available. So I don't know how confident I am they're going to get a defenseman. I'd like to see them add a defenseman. It doesn't sound like Michkov, the Russian star prospect that some thought could fall, is going to be anywhere near the Sabres at 13. I guess stranger things have happened. But that's pretty much it on Adam's comments. But I'll get a little bit more into his mindset going into the draft, the NHL draft itself, which is coming your way in a couple days. And we'll tackle that more on tomorrow's show here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Glad to be back just in time for draft week, and then free agency. Should be an exciting few weeks as the Sabres are going to round out their group for this coming season and draft someone probably for the future in the first round in the NHL draft. Thanks, everybody, for listening and making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. Every day is tomorrow. A full breakdown, preview of the NHL draft. That's next here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.